So first of all, as far as the Catholicism is concerned, one of the differences between Reform Judaism and Catholicism is that Reform Judaism does not have the Trinity. Reform Judaism, this is the Reform movement, does not ascribe multiple parts to God, which is one of, as far as Jewish theology is concerned, Christianity has its own line of reasoning about it, but as far as Jewish theology is concerned, Trinitarianism, because of the splitting up of God, is the splitting up of God into something that includes a person, is one of the most problematic parts of Christianity from a Jewish perspective. There is no such thing in Reform. In fact, Reform advocates directly for all of the Jewish traditions as its own, even if it accepts people who may not practice some of them.
It's not as if it accepts these people. It's predominantly made up of these people. Only around 7% of Reformed Jews keep basic Jewish holidays. And also, I disagree that Reform Judaism is primarily this theistic movement. The Rambam said that it's better for someone to be a pagan than it is to be an atheist. And I mean, in terms of Reform Judaism's acceptability of atheism, I think it's quite different. Also, I'll say that at the end of the day, even if they accept tenets of Reform Jewish theology, I think the issue would be is that it truly wouldn't be a cultural assimilation, that it would be if, let's say, an Orthodox group did it, because there really isn't any sort of real cultural assimilation that happens in a Reform conversion that's quite so easy. I mean, for a Reform conversion, all you have to do is follow for a year just Jewish holidays in an Orthodox synagogue, a Reform synagogue, usually while breaking halacha while doing so. I mean, it's just not assimilation in the same sense that Orthodoxy would do it, which would be like very rigid classes, very rigid things like this. It's more comparable with Reform Judaism of joining a club than it is, let's say, to joining a citizenship, which I think Orthodox Judaism focuses more on. Also, I do not think you fully addressed the fact that Reform Judaism does have this internal demographic issue. Do you really want to be part of a religion that keeps on having to have almost like a Ponzi scheme, like keep on attracting more people just because the internal group of it keeps on marrying outwards? Is this a movement that truly, do you think, works in the best interest of the Jewish people? Because I think it dilutes the actual definition of what it means to be a Jew. Because no longer is it this culture, this history, this ethnicity, for lack of better words, although I don't think it's quite the best term for it, that it is like interconnected. With Reform Judaism, it not only disagrees with the fundamental principles of Judaism. I've said this, but I disagree that it's a primarily culturally Jewish movement. The vast majority of Reform Jews cannot speak any other language other than English. The vast majority of Reform Jews cannot speak Hebrew, cannot read the Torah and understand it. I mean, these sort of cultural differences that Judaism has to the outside world, I have not seen any of them inside Reform Judaism. From what I understand, Reform Jews are, for the most part, at least demographically and culturally, I mean, they participated in many of the same demographic trends that affluent people in the United States experience. For example, like flight from areas after low-income people started moving in, very low, like pretty low birth rates, lots of other things like participations in certain sectors of the economy. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any substantial cultural difference between Reform Jews and these people. And also, at the same time, I just don't understand, what is the definition of Reform Judaism? Is it a religion? But I thought Reform Judaism does not believe the Torah to be immutable and true. Is it a ethnicity? Well, what's up with the converts? Is it a culture? Well, I don't see any sort of shared culture between them. Is it a shared set of values? Well, I don't see the values that Reform Judaism preaches as Jewish. Explain to me what is Jewish about egalitarianism. Not that I have an inherent issue with egalitarianism, but in order for something to be Jewish or I don't know, Germanic or Canadian. There has to be the experience of the vast majority of the people within the label. And for the most part, egalitarianism, liberalism, all these things, historically were not viewed at all as part of a consistent Jewish tradition. And these seem to be the things that Reform Judaism places the pinnacle of their Judaism.